Okay, so I've got my building shell starting to come together, but then before I can go much further with these storefront openings, that I'm just coming back around to show you on the corner there, Reservoir and Mary Street. But you can see that most of them are at the same street level, coming around to Mary Street, but then it starts to rise really from about here, and you should look at putting in these other different openings as well. So you've got a garage opening there, and these, do you know what these things are? Yes, they're fire escapes. So that's really important. So for interior design, you will often need to think about those things. I know sometimes people will tell you you don't have to do the hard construction work, but you know, having done your construction classes earlier today, that you definitely need to look at that as well. And so that's going to be part of your design, working out where the fire escapes go in. Have you had a look at the requirements for fire escapes? Okay, you should be starting to look at that. So it's in volume 1 of NCC, BCA. Do you know which section of volume 1 it is? There's some light reading for you. If you haven't read through this already, you need to go and read it. It's section D. So for interior design, you're expected to know that section almost off by heart, and so you need to start looking at that as well. And I'll give you a guide for the requirements for your fire exits, but you definitely need to look at the requirements. And it's not that different for retail, but definitely for hospitality building this size, you need to look at those requirements and plan your whole building around it. So it's a good chance when we start to set out the openings to, again, think about those issues, and again, look at the street level. So we've got the street level now coming up to the corner there, where it's a metre roughly above ground level. I'm just going to say round it off and make it 1,000 or a metre. So at that corner point, that's what we're aiming for. That metre above the interior floor level. So back to Revit. I'm going to go to the, sorry, not to the ground floor plan, I'm going to go to my site floor plan. And then you can see on the Massing and Site tab, you've got the Toposurface tool. Now, notice it begins with this place point option, and then you can see the default elevation height is 0. So before I place a point, I'm just going to switch to an elevation so that you can see my levels. Your levels probably will be the same height, but you just need to be aware of that. So I've got the ground floor there at 0, and again looking at the Mary Street and Reservoir Street facade, you can see there's not much of a step, but even though this is almost flush, you can see here there's a little bit of a step over there. So how high do you think that step would be? Huh? Yeah, a brick, yeah, or 10 centimetres, that's good, yeah. So a brick is about 76, 86 with mortar, but if you round it off to 100, that's fine, and it's good to work in round numbers, so yeah, so 100's good. And so it's also good to have it below the floor level, because if we make it flush, then our ground surface might cover the floor inside anyway. So again, you need to just think about the heights before you go and start placing points. So I've switched back to my site floor plan, and now notice I've lost that option to change the elevation because I've gone and used some different tools. So you've got to know that it starts with that place point option, but if you go and do something else, you just need to choose it again, and then you get the option to set the elevation. So I'll make it minus 100. Yep. And then this is the facade I was just looking at. So here is the Reservoir Street frontage. And again, we said we're going to make that entire street front the same level. So here I'm zooming in just to get the corner of the building. It doesn't really matter if you get the outside or the inside there of the wall. You could do both points if you're not sure, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to go to wireframe so that you can see the points as I place them. So there, zooming in a bit, you can see those two black dots are the 2 points. And because I've only placed 2 points, there's no surface yet. You just think about it logically, you can't have a surface with less than 3 points. So you'll see when I click the third point, I'll just do another one here, then I get a surface. It's just like joining the dots. So then I can keep clicking more points, and I'm just going to go along clicking points, just a few along that facade. You don't need to do every single point. And, okay, so at the moment it's a very thin little strip of a surface. So to make it a bit bigger, we want to see the streets and the other things around the building. So I'm going to click some points over here, and then maybe over the other side of the street, and just keep bringing that out. And you can see then that we've got a surface now that's much larger. And again, you need to think about the reality, which is that this street would probably slope down from here. Right, if we know that the high point is up here, it probably does slope down in this direction generally, the ground. And if you've walked there, you'd know it definitely slopes up from, you know, this is where Central is down here, and the street slopes up this way. You know, all those streets in Surrey Hills coming up from Elizabeth Street slope up towards, what's the top of the hill there? Obviously don't go to the area much, but some of you must. What? No one goes to Surrey Hills anymore? What? Okay. Oh, right. Okay, yeah, they've killed it. Now that people don't go out in the city anymore, I suppose people don't know. But this used to be one of the main areas people would go out. And so there are lots of pubs and things on the main road up here. Oh, no, sorry, further up the hill. So it's quite a well-known street. I'm just trying to... Crown Street is the main street that runs up the top of the hill there. Right, and you'll see it's a big slope. So the hill runs up Reservoir Street to Crown Street at the top there. And that's basically the top of the hill. There used to be a well-known architecture firm just near there called Anchor Mortlock and Woolley, which is about here somewhere on the other side of the hill. And yeah, just a good area to walk around if you haven't already done that. And so then I'll keep placing points though at the same height. So I just wanted to point out it definitely slopes, but we don't need to show that slope when it's not that close to the building. So I'm going to make all these points fairly flat. In other words, keeping the height at minus 100. But just remember, that's not the way the ground really is. We're just modifying it a little bit. And again, clicking points just to bring out the surface and give myself a bit of room around the building. And then, what height did I say we want the corner up here to be? Remember? So that's the corner where it rises. So this is Reservoir Street that I've just done. And then coming along, we've got Mary Street, coming along here. And remember, this is the important part. This point's higher. That's a metre above street level, we're going to say. Again, just keep it as a round number, so I'll say 1,000. So I'm going to type in here for the elevation, 1,000. And then make that point there, obviously the corner, 1,000. And I'm going to click some more points near that. Again, just to give myself more room to work with and to extend the surface to go out further from the building. Now, before I click a point maybe down to the right here, I'm going to change the elevation again, this time to about 500. Because if I make it 0, so if I leave it at 1,000, then it'll slope from this side to the left. And I don't want it to, I want it to slope from the top right down to the bottom left. Something like that. And then again, just to make it even better, I'm going to click another point inside the building where I think it'll be about 500. So if I said this is 1,000 and that's 0 or minus 100, then 500 would be roughly in the middle of the building, or maybe about there, just use your judgment. And another couple of points over here. And notice how the contour line is changing. So it generates the contour lines automatically. And you can control it, so if you want to change the height and see what happens, if I make this say 300, and then I'll put some points here along the road, you can see that that contour line, again, is going to move. Make it maybe 100, and then put another point about there, about here. And there we go. That one's a bit annoying, so I'll just maybe put in 300 again, and then just put a few points around there. Don't know why that won't go away. It's a bit unpredictable sometimes, the way it does this. Yeah, that'll do. Don't be too fussy about these points, and as long as you don't put in huge variations in height, it won't really matter too much, as long as you've got the 1,000 at the corner here, minus 100 along Reservoir Street. But then, well, actually what I'm going to do is, before I show you the next part, I'm going to finish that and show you how the surface looks. So to do that, I'm going to go to this north elevation, and you can see there now the ground surface is sloping. But is that what we want? Do you want it to slope from the corner there diagonally straight up to this corner? Would you want that? Well, kind of. I mean, that's the way it would have been originally. The ground probably would have sloped fairly evenly, but because we want some entrances that are going to be flat, we don't just want that to be a single diagonal slope. Right, so you might have doors here and here. So then you can't have a door with a diagonal entrance or a sloping entrance. Okay, so we've got to flatten some of this out, or grade it, that's what it's called. So I'm going to go back to my site floor plan, select the topo surface, and then you can just go back and edit the surface once you've selected it. So you'll always get that option. When you select a topo surface, you go to edit surface, and then place points again, and you can keep refining that surface. So I'll change, well, the elevation there, 300, that might be pretty good. So for this area, I might put a couple of points in. And then let's say I want my hotel entrance to be about here. So for the sake of simplicity, let's say I want that to be at the same level as Reservoir Street. I'll make that minus 100. And I'll put a couple of points in around there, and you can see it's making some pretty dramatic changes. So if I go back to my elevation, well, when I finish the surface, you can see it doesn't really look that different yet. And that's because of where the elevation view is. So I'm going to the site floor plan again, and I'm going to select this elevation, and that's this arrowhead here, and I'm going to drag that cut line so that it's closer to the building, and then back to my north elevation, and then you can see the changes. Right, so does that make sense? When you start putting in different points, you just get more control over the height of the different parts of your surface. And then I'm going to show you a really good trick you can use to make all these walls come down. Right, so remember, I've made the ground surface minus 100. So all of these 230mm walls need to come down to meet that surface. So I'm just going to select one of them, right click, and then go to select all instances in entire project. To select every single one of those walls. There's 36 of them you can see over there. And then I can just make the face offset minus 100. So in the 3D view, you can see now they're all touching. Well, these are right on that surface. You can bring them down a little bit more if you want to even. So if you can right click, select all instances in your entire project, and let's make it minus 150. Let's just make sure it goes through the surface. That looks better. Okay, so later you'll see you can easily keep extending that surface. I'm not going to do very much more with it now, but I'll just show you an easy way. If you do select it and then go edit surface, you can always copy points. So if you copy points that you've made previously, that works of course. Okay. Yes, that's right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, doesn't need to be even. That's good. Yeah. Okay, but then what you're going to see, and this is what I want to show you before we do the curtain wall. If you look inside your building now, what are you going to see? Yeah, you'll see it coming down, and then you're going to see what would have been there when they before they built the building. The ground sloping across that whole area. So I'm just orbiting so that you can see that. So inside the building, we've got all this earth. And they, of course, would have excavated to allow all the interior space for the building. So how do you do that with Revit? Do you know the tool you use to excavate your Toposurface? What's the tool? Oh, you haven't done this? Okay, right. Okay, so if we go back to site, there is of course a special tool that you use to excavate on the Massing and Site tab called Building Pad. Okay, so with building pads, they work only with Toposurfaces. So building pad there, and I'm drawing in my site floor plan so that you can see everything. But then you can see the level there has come up with ground floor. Where do you think we want our pad to be? Exactly, basement. We're going to excavate all the way down to the car park, so that's the basement level. And then I'm simply going to draw a rectangle. So with the rectangle option there, I'm going to trace just the main walls. You don't need to go all the way around your piers. So just like that. Just a rectangle. Tick's finished. And now I'll show you in the section. Okay, it was shaded here, it's probably easier to see. There we are. Right, so there's the ground surface. And you can see now it's been excavated, so there's the pad. I didn't change any of the settings, so that's just the default setting for the pad, which is about 300 or 400 thick. Yeah, 304 thick, it's a foot. So without that pad, if I delete it, right, if it's gone, we've got the ground surface there. But with the pad, it excavates the ground. And so the final thing there may be just to make the site look a bit better. Notice how it only goes down so far. So have you had a look at the setting that you use to change the depth of your Toposurface? It's one that's not so obvious. It's on the Massing and Site tab. You've got this little funny down arrow on that model site panel. See there, that angled arrow for your site settings? And there you can see why it only goes down that far. It's on minus 3,000. So I'll change that to minus 5,000. Right, and that just brings that hatch pattern down. And there we are. Also gives you a chance to have a good look at your interior, start to think about your heights and the way everything's going to go together, and whether you're going to keep the ceiling as a separate element or have the floor joists exposed and try and have your surfaces exposed as well. And you'll see then why we've got the top of the columns there with a gap between that and the floor. Well, because we've got the beams and the ceiling structure that need to go in between. So they could be exposed or could all be concealed. So we'll go over the ways you model that. Yeah, so make sure you've had a good look at the section, and at this point though you'll be focusing mostly on the topo. Well, there's no beams there yet. That's what I'm saying. So this is the column. Oh yeah, no, so there we haven't got the columns in yet. Yep, so there'll be concrete columns for that one. Yeah. So that's probably all you need to do first before we can get back onto the curtain walls. So I'll give you some time to get that done.